Thank you very much. In addition to the critical investigations and prosecutions that are ongoing in domestic courts, the International Criminal Court has a key role to play in ensuring accountability. The ICC has already issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for the war crime of forcibly transferring Ukrainian children into Russia. The court continues to investigate other war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Senior administration officials, yourself and the Attorney General, have repeatedly expressed support for the ICC's Ukraine investigation. Congress has made its support clear as well by passing provisions last Congress that Senator Graham alluded to on a bipartisan basis that provide the executive branch with greater flexibility to provide evidence and other forms of support to the court in relation to Ukraine. Yet, I understand that the administration still has not provided this assistance because of objections by the Department of Defense. As I hear the reports of Russian soldiers beheading Ukrainian prisoners, raping 4-year-old girls, I am stunned to hear that this is still being debated in Washington. There is simply no debate about the right and moral course of action at this moment. That is why Ranking Member Graham and I led a bipartisan letter to President Biden last month, urging him to be on the right side of history. I ask you this: is the Biden administration and all the departments of this government united in this effort?
Senator, first of all, let me say we are absolutely united in ensuring there is accountability for the atrocities that you've laid out, that this video laid out, and I talked about in my opening statement. There must be accountability for all of those responsible, and we are grateful for the work that this Congress did in passing the law that Ranking Member Graham and you have referenced that provides a narrow ability and a clear ability for the United States to provide assistance to the ICC for investigations of foreign nationals arising from the situation in Ukraine. The discussions about how to use that authority are, as you noted, ongoing, but there is absolute unanimity in ensuring accountability across this government and using all of the tools that we can bring to bear to bring about accountability.
You know that the debate on the United States and its relationship with the International Court has been longstanding and heated and sometimes emotional. That's why we've tried to take steps to say that we can cooperate by providing evidence and support with the ICC without compromising our position as to membership. Do you have any doubt in your mind that we have sufficient legal protection to proceed with cooperating at this level?
I don't, Senator, and this is why we're very grateful for the work we were able to do with you and your staffs in formulating the statute that you've referenced that the Congress passed late last year to provide this cabined, narrow ability for us as a government to provide assistance to the ICC in this limited circumstances where it's of investigations of foreign nationals arising from the situation in Ukraine. And we were grateful to be able to work with you to provide that narrow capability.
So you have established in your answers to these two questions, first, that this administration is bounded and determined to help in any effort to prosecute war crimes against Vladimir Putin, and second, that doing so will not compromise our government or our military or any branch of our government, and can be done under existing law. Is that a fair conclusion?
I think that's a fair conclusion, Senator. I know there's also some historical precedent for our being able to provide assistance to the ICC in very targeted ways with respect to prior proceedings. So again, I think the statute and the way the Congress approached this, and again, we were grateful to be able to work with the staff on having this ability be cabined in the way that I've described.
Well, I'm going to conclude by asking my colleague if we could join in another effort, perhaps a letter to the Department of Defense specifically, and to the President based on what the testimony has brought forth this morning. I now yield to Senator Graham. I want to thank the Deputy Attorney General for being present. I would like to make a couple points as chair. First, the safety and security of all including elected officials, is the highest priority. There is never an excuse for violence nor destruction of property in the pursuit of any perceived constitutional right. I think that it should be agreed on by everyone here. We have passed legislation in this committee specifically to protect federal judges and their families. The reason is there have been some horrible tragedies. One occurred in Chicago, another one occurred in New Jersey, and led us to put establish new standards in place for the protection of the men and women who serve in the judiciary. I might say that the one bill that we passed from the committee and sent to the floor, the Anderl Judicial Security and Privacy Act, was held up on the floor for almost a year by the junior senator from Kentucky. 1 year, when protection should have been issued, it was not because of one senator's decision. But finally, it was allowed to move forward, and it now is the law. And I'm sure, I hope, I can say that we're doing everything we can to enforce it. Let me also say that it is interesting to listen to the debate about exercise of First Amendment rights. It appears that when the Department of Justice issued a memorandum relative to school board meetings and safety at those meetings, it became extremely controversial because some said it was in dampening or hindering parents to express themselves at school board meetings if they disagreed with school policy. I read it to protect the members of the school board who in my state and others have been threatened with their lives, intimidated to the point where they resigned from the school boards because of the coercion that was being extended toward them. Also, I can't understand this theory that what happened in the Capitol building on January 6th was so innocent. It was far from innocent. I believe some 800 have been prosecuted. Does the deputy know the number?
Over 1,000, Senator.
Over 1,000 have been prosecuted.
Charges brought, excuse me, Chairman, over 1,000 charges brought.
Over 1,000 charges brought. It is hard to imagine that anyone could keep a straight face and say they stepped in through a broken window for a sightseeing tour of the Capitol. That is incredible. What happened that day, 150 members of law enforcement were assaulted, some very seriously, suffering injuries they're still trying to recover from. And there was also the reality that a number of people died as a result of that insurrection. The fact that it happened January 6th was no coincidence. January 6, 2021, if I'm not mistaken, I know I'm not mistaken, was the day chosen when we counted electoral votes to establish who would be the President of the United States. There was an effort by those who denied the results of that election to question its results, and I can tell you that that was even witnessed yesterday by the compromise or settlement that resulted in Fox News paying close to $800 million as a fine to Dominion Corporation that manufactures election machinery on the premise that there were misstatements made on the air about what happened that day. I hope that this has been brought to rest, this whole question of the legitimacy of the election in 2020, but it still is being played out. I'd like to say a word, if I can, about Section 702. Section 702 is a device or procedure used by our government to keep us safe. I believe that is the premise of it, to make sure that if we suspect that someone overseas wishes us ill or is going to do something in a negative way, we learn that ahead of time and stop it from happening. That is a noble and proper goal for it to pursue. The reality is, though, in the process of intercepting messages from foreigners, we often involve Americans in the same conversation, millions of them. And the question is, are those Americans losing their constitutional rights for due process by the 702 procedure? I have voted against 702 consistently in the past, but I've been assured there will be efforts made by this administration to put in safeguards so that innocent civilians will be protected from losing their constitutional rights in this process. I hope we can work together on that goal ultimately to be achieved. So there are many issues before us. I thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, you have taken a second round of questioning.
No,
I
it
would
wasn't a
ask
second
for
round
one.
of question. That was a chairman's statement.
Well, you also asked questions, and you offered a moment ago an opportunity for a second round.
Oh,
and I
didn't.
would
No,
certainly
didn't.
appreciate
I
that.
did not offer for a second round.
Okay, so your rules are you get a second round of questioning and no one else does?
No, the rules are you don't make them up. I'm the chairman.
You make them up.
I appreciate the Deputy Attorney General appearing before the committee.
You're continuing your pattern, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you're continuing your deportment. I'd like to conclude today's hearing by sharing the words of a leader I deeply admire. I had a chance to meet with him last year. Sadly, I fear I may not have that privilege again. His name is Vladimir Kara-Murza, a fearless Russian dissident and a champion for democracy. On Monday, Mr. Kara-Murza was sentenced to 25 years in prison by Russia for speaking out against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Last week, the Washington Post published his final testimony in the sham trial. Mr. Kara-Murza said, and I quote, "I know that the day will come when the darkness over our country will dissipate, when a war will be called a war, and a usurper is a usurper, and when those who kindled and unleashed this war, rather than those who tried to stop it, will be recognized as criminals. This day will come as inevitably as spring follows even the coldest winter." Mr. Kara-Murza may not live to see justice for Russia's crimes against Ukraine, but he is absolutely right. That day will come. It's only a question of when. And we in the Senate have the power to ensure that that day comes sooner rather than later. The people of Ukraine are counting on us. Again, Deputy Attorney General, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.